Get your ears wrapped around the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. All the scoop you need to know from college basketball to the NBA and even March Madness. News of your rising stars. Topics on and off the hardwood. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeff Maliff, and with me is the Scottie Pippen to my Michael Jordan, Klay Thompson to my Stephen Curry. I'm introducing, so yeah, I get whatever I want. Marc Souza, everybody.
You're my Lonzo Ball to my LeBron James.
Yeah, no, it doesn't really work because they're not that good of a duo. Anyways, welcome. We are going to start off with some of the important games like the Warriors versus the Bulls and the Raptors versus the Bucks and also the Lakers game. We're going to talk about every single NBA game that's happened in the last couple of days, and we're going to do our power rankings, which is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and we'll talk about some of the leaders in different individual stats categories, points, rebounds, and assists. We'll talk about who is in the top 5 in those categories, surprising names. Some players who are just balling out right now at the beginning of the season. Of course, we're only 8 games into it. Some teams have played less than that. So early season. But why don't we start off with the Warriors and the Bulls? Last night was a record-setting performance by Klay Thompson as he broke the record of his teammate Steph Curry for most threes scored in a game. He hit 14
of 20. He did shoot 24 threes.
Yeah, but 14, that's incredible.
Stephen Curry only shot 4 threes, which is kind of surprising, all things considered.
Well, yeah, because Thompson was shooting all of them.
Yeah. He went 18 of 29, so 4 of his shots were not threes out of his 18 that he made. 52 points, 5 rebounds, no assist. Draymond Green actually had 3.6 rebounds and 11 assists, so a lot of his passes are probably to Thompson. Durant only had 14 points, 3 rebounds, 8 assists. Curry had 23 points still, with adding Klay Thompson's 52. And it was all basically Klay Thompson from there.
Yeah, the Warriors scored 92 points at halftime, which is insane. But again, the score looks a little bit better on paper as the Bulls were within 25 points, but I think it was actually worse. I mean, when you break it down, the Bulls did outscore the Warriors by 11 in the fourth quarter, and the Bulls outscored the Warriors by 6 in the third. So they cut that deficit. It was a much, much larger lead. At halftime, it was 92-50, which is kind of funny, but not funny if you're a Bulls fan. Klay Thompson, though, on fire.
Any of you left.
Klay Thompson did it with stitches. He did it with a headband for some of the game. They could not stop him. He's one of those players. When he gets hot, it's incredibly difficult to stop him. I mean, he's a very good shooter in general, but, man, when he gets on those tears, he is something else.
Yeah, he gets bad. He's something. That whole team is something else, to be honest. Well, I think everyone already knew that.
Yeah, I mean, Klay Thompson scores 52 points. Of course, not everybody's going to be scoring over 30 when one guy scores 52 on that team, but Curry 23, like you mentioned, Durant 14. Just a crazy, crazy night for Klay Thompson. He had been struggling mightily this year. He was shooting the worst percentage in the NBA on three-pointers for all qualifying players. He came into the game 14%. I think he fixed that percentage last night.
Yeah, absolutely. percentage is more in his favor now than it was before.
Warriors go to 7-1. They're cruising. They're looking good. They had a couple close games to start, but they're starting to kind of impose their will. They're imposing their will right now. So, interesting day for Klay Thompson and the Warriors. And the Bulls, they fall to 2-5. Unfortunately, this is just a terrible matchup for them. But anyways, let's move on.
That is move on. Lakers and Timberwolves. 124-120 goes to the Minnesota Timberwolves. Jimmy Butler again has a great game. 32 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 blocks, and a steal for that man. Karl Anthony Towns had a pretty fantastic game himself with 25 points and 16 rebounds. So they did pretty well without Andrew Wiggins there. And Jeff Teague also had a pretty good game. 9 points, 3 rebounds, 5 assists. Yeah, 32 minutes is not the best, but he did contribute nonetheless. Did go 2 of 12 from the field, but nonetheless he did contribute. And Derrick Rose, even from the bench, had 11 points, 7 rebounds, 7 assists. So the Timberwolves did extremely well. Even though LeBron's 29 points, 10 rebounds, 7 assists was great, it was not enough for them to pull it over the Minnesota Timberwolves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Jimmy Butler, he is just fantastic. He is playing hard. We talked about how the trade rumor for Jimmy Butler that had been heating up all off season, especially as we headed into the season. But he's not playing like he wants to be traded. He's playing like he wants to stay in Minnesota. I think that he's just been a huge factor for them early on, and he really showed it last night. He actually is leading the NBA in hustle stats, and what hustle stats are is hands on loose balls, creating turnovers, whether you actually get the turnover or just create one. He leads the NBA by a considerable margin. He averages 4.8 a game where he's getting his hand on a ball that leads to a turnover, whether he gets the turnover or a teammate. So he's doing it on both ends of the floor.
Yeah, he has a lot of tenacity when it comes to the game, both defensive and offensive side. And I know he has some trouble with the Timberwolves right now, but they're playing extremely well. I know he might get traded. Houston did offer him 4 first-round draft picks, which sounded absolutely ridiculous. But seeing him play now doesn't seem like that big of a deal now for the Rockets because they're going to be in high draft picks for a long time, so those are really not worth much.
Yeah, I mean, the Timberwolves they're struggling a little bit. I mean, they're still 3-4. But Jimmy Butler is playing well, and he's being a professional through this. I give him credit there because whether or not he wants to be traded, whether or not they will trade him, I like that he's going out there and he's putting it all on the line every night and not just mailing it in or throwing a fit or not hustling because he wants to be traded. He's not doing any of those things. He's being a professional. He's playing hard. He's trying to win every night. And it's just really good to see because it's easy to see sometimes guys will get checked out and things like that when they want to be traded and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a pretty good thing for Timberwolves. Everyone thought they were going to go on a downhill slump during this whole process with Jimmy Butler, and you can't blame them. Usually, when you have this turmoil inside your starting five, especially with your star players, things are not meant to happen. And so, having this all transpire, it has been a very, I think, relief for the Timberwolves fan base.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about the Lakers as they fall to 2-5. They did have Ingram and Rondo back, so they were at full strength last night. We saw Kuzma, James, Ingram, McGee, and Ball start. So Lonzo gets a start over Rondo, but Lonzo doesn't do a whole lot. 24 minutes, 4 points, 1 rebound.
Yeah,
1
I
assist.
saw that. That's almost non-existent.
Yeah, that's weird to me. Rondo comes in off the bench, 13.6 boards, 8 assists. He was more effective in last night's game. He made his mark a lot more than Lonzo did. So what do you make of the Lakers so far? We've talked about their early season struggles. Do you think that this is just another step in their first 15, 20 games where they kind of figure it out, or are you actually concerned with them at this point?
The way LeBron's been playing has been solid, no doubt about it, but the rest of the team really needs to step up to help LeBron win these games because, it was a one-man show for him in Cleveland and all that kind of things early in his career. Fact of the matter is he needs help now. He's getting up there in age. And they need to, he's on here, he's saying, I know what I got myself into, but I don't really think he knows what he got himself into based off this team. There's a lot of good players now because they want to play with LeBron. Fact of the matter is they're not winning games.
Yeah.
And that's pretty unusual for a LeBron-based team in the regular season.
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, this team will be scrutinized all year because they're the Lakers. They'll be criticized. They'll be praised when it goes well.
Especially with LeBron.
Yeah, they'll be praised when it's going well. They'll be scrutinized when it's not. But one thing that will always be under the microscope for fans of the NBA is how they built this roster. I mean, we know that they try to build like the anti-Warriors type team, right? Like a team that's not a three-point shooting team, at least primarily. They're trying to be a team that plays tough defense, a team that play makes a lot to the hoop, gets close buckets, twos over threes. And in today's NBA, that's kind of a lost art. Not a lot of teams are playing like that. So their whole idea was, why would we build a team like everyone else when no one can catch the Warriors? Why don't we try and build something different against the grain? So with that being said, when it struggles, when it doesn't work out, then people will point to it and say, yeah, I'm not sure that that's the right course of action for a franchise to take. So I don't know, man.
There's a lot of questions with this team still.
They were 12 of 33 from 3, 36%. But when we look at their counterpart, the T-Wolves were 14 of 29. Or 29, excuse me. So they shot at 48% last night. They shot less threes than the Lakers, but they made 2 more. They won by 4 points. The other stats are pretty even. That for me is where the problem is with the Lakers, is that they don't need to shoot 43s a night, but I think that they're going to have to make above 40% to really, really be a good team. Even if they only shoot 30, 33 times a night from 3, they got to make it. They got to make them at a 40% clip or so. I think that would help the rest of their offense flow better. But what's also concerning is, you give up 124 points last night to the Timberwolves. You give up 110 to the Spurs, 114 to the Nuggets, 113 to the Suns. So you're not really stopping teams. You're not defending at an incredible rate. So something's got to change. Either they got to defend better or they have to hit the threes more.
Yeah, their defense is probably their weakest point. That's pretty accurate.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact of the matter is, you need defense. How many times have we said this? Defense wins championships.
You need defense if you're not hitting threes. That's for sure. In today's NBA, I mean, you have
absolutely.
to do one or the other,
without question, especially in this situation. And bottom line is, when they play the Warriors, if it's a playoff game playing the Warriors and they can't stop a 3 and they can't shoot a 3, it's gonna be a blowout.
Yeah. So let's transition to what I think was the most impressive game of last night, the most impressive win of last night. The Milwaukee Bucks 124, Toronto Raptors 109. So the Bucks beat Toronto. They improved to 7-0. Toronto falls to 6-1. They were undefeated, of course, until last night. But Jeff, the Bucks did this without Giannis Antetokounmpo. Of course, you know him as the Greek Freak. How impressive is that, to beat the Raptors by 15 points without your best player?
It shows really how good the Bucks are and how much of a East contender they can be. We put them underneath the Toronto Raptors in our rankings at the beginning of the season. Right now, I'm putting them over them.
Yeah, it really shows that they're a team other than the Greek Freak. It's not just him and a cast of characters. We saw Ilyasova, Middleton, Brook Lopez, Eric Bledsoe, and Malcolm Brogdon all start last night. Just a good overall game. I think Brook Lopez has been a good addition to that team. He didn't have a big game last night, but overall, I think he's been a nice little underrated addition to the Milwaukee Bucks. So, yeah, you were saying that you think that you'll put them right now as the team to beat in the East, or do you consider Boston,
You know what?
Toronto?
Yes, I put the Bucks right now as the team to beat in the East. They're the undefeated team right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna put them as the top team in the East right now and the team to beat.
Yeah, I mean, it should be noted that there was no Kawhi for the Raptors, but still, the 15-point win by Milwaukee, both teams without their best player, that's just impressive. So, I mean, we look right now, and you see Milwaukee at 7-0, Boston's at 4-2, Toronto 6-1, Detroit 4-1. A nice start to the season for the Milwaukee Bucks. And we're going to do our power rankings later on in this show, so we'll see how high or how low they are. Of course, we'll be doing our top 5, bottom 5. But yeah, very good game by Milwaukee. Very impressive win against the Toronto Raptors. So what do you say we go to a quick break and we come back? We'll break down the other games. There was a bunch of NBA action last night. We'll talk about each one of those games. We'll talk about those teams in particular and where they go from here. So we'll do that right after this.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
And welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. We talk about some of the main games of yesterday, such as Raptors and the Bucks, Lakers losing to the Timberwolves, and the Warriors handling the Bulls pretty handily. I said that twice. Anyways, we're going to move on to the other games that happened this week, such as You want to start or do you want me to start?
I'll start.
Okay, you'll start.
Nuggets and Pelicans, a clash between two top teams in the West, two playoff potential teams. Denver takes the win at home, 116-111. Despite the Pelicans hanging in there tough, the Nuggets get the win. The Nuggets have been very impressive so far this year. We take a look at the box score. I'll start off with the Pelicans. Anthony Davis, first off, did not play. That should be noted, but the Pelicans have been very good this year other than Anthony Davis. One guy in particular, Mirotic, 17 points, 10 boards, 2 assists. Drew Holiday, 16, 8, and 9. Moore had 18, 2, and 2. 24 off the bench for Julius Randle. But the Pelicans dropped their second game of the season. They fall to 4-2. We look at, on the other side there, Denver, led by Harris and Murray, both had 23 points for the backcourt there. 5 boards, 2 assists for Jamal Murray. Gary Harris had 6 boards and 6 assists to go with his 23 points. Millsap contributed with 18 and 8. And Jokic, almost a triple-double, very close, 12, 9, and 10. Denver's looking very strong. They're a well-balanced team. Jokic is a really good player. They just do a lot of things well. They defend well. So very, very good start to their season. I think Denver will be a playoff team when this is all said and done. I do think the Pelicans will be too, but you know how it is in the West. Both of these teams, at the end of the season, they could be just a couple games out or a couple games in. A lot of movement could happen. So every game in the Western Conference is very, very important. So again, nice to see the Nuggets get a win, improve to 5-1.
Speaking of the West, Spurs and Mavericks went to final overtime. San Antonio takes it 113-108. DeMar DeRozan is on fire lately. 34 points, 6 rebounds, 9 assists. Another huge game for him. 3 steals to top that. But another surprising is Rudy Gay had 6 steals this game also. 15 points, 11 rebounds, 4 assists. Marcus Aldridge had 20 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists. So overall, everyone played their part in this game, especially DeRozan, Gay, and Aldridge. And Luka Doncic has had a great game himself. Grant, in all due respect to everyone else, but he had 31 points, 8 rebounds,
big game,
4 assists, huge for the rookie. DeAndre Jordan had 18 rebounds, and just everything just seems to be going well with the rookie Luka Doncic. He's probably, if you had to rank him right now, he's probably the rookie of the year.
Yeah, I'd
just
say.
Based off his performances.
Yeah,
but DeRozan has been playing unstoppable. He's had playing with, I said this before, he played with a chip on his shoulder, and he's still playing at an extremely high level. MVP-like numbers for him. Don't you think so?
I wouldn't go that far, but he's been playing very well, absolutely.
Yeah, I can see him in like an MVP running at the moment right now. I put him up there in the MVP votes and season ended right now.
He is in the top 5 in assists, by the way, which is awesome.
Yeah, good for him. And any other games you want to talk about?
Yeah, absolutely. Why don't we go take a look at the Nets and the Knicks? A battle of 2 teams that hope one day they can get back to the top of the Eastern Conference, but it's not today, unfortunately. So the Knicks, though, they get the win, 115-96. Both teams are now 2-5. It's a big win for the Knicks as they rout the Brooklyn Nets. We take a look at the box score again for the Knicks. Tim Hardaway Jr., 25, 8, and 5. He was definitely the player of the game yesterday for the Knicks. We did see quite a few players contribute with double digits in points. We saw 7 in total, 6 excluding Tim Hardaway Jr. So Cantor off the bench also had 15 and 15 in 26 minutes. So that's a very productive game for Enes Kanter coming off the bench. But yeah, I mean, just an all-around good performance by the Knicks. It helps when they're playing another struggling team. We'll see if anything changes when they can get back Porzingis. We'll see if they have any semblance of a playoff team, even in the Eastern Conference. Obviously, if they can get him back, that makes a big difference. That changes the aspect of how you look at that team. But for the Nets, you know, they do lose this game. Not a whole lot in the box score. D'Angelo Russell, 13, 3, and 2. He probably had the best game. Maybe Hollis Jefferson at 16 and 7 off the bench for the Nets, but not a whole lot going on, and Nets fall to 2 and 5. So, what do you got next there, Jeff?
The next they have the Hawks and 76ers. 76ers bounce back and win this game pretty handily, 113-92. And with this 113, Ben Simmons, 21 points, 12 rebounds, 9 assists, almost a triple-double for the young man. Marquise Fultz had a pretty good game himself, 16 points, 4 rebounds, 7 assists. And it was just all around a good effort. Joel Embiid played pretty mediocre for him, 30 minutes and only 10 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists. We all know he can do much better than that. So that was kind of disappointing to watch. But Ben Simmons had a great game. Fultz had a great game. The 2 number 1 picks, just both playing really well together. And this team still looks like a playoff contender. Still looks like it can win the East. Hawks, on the other hand,
You think to win the East?
It's possible. I mean, I'm not leaving them out, of course. But then you look at the Hawks, and Trae Young had that great game, and then only has 11 points, 2 rebounds, 8 assists. And this team just looks almost lost now. This team was looking good. Now they're looking lost. But that's kind of how the Hawks play. They play very inconsistently. They have good games and they have terrible games. Mm-hmm. And this was just one of those terrible games.
Yeah, the Hawks, I think, at the end of the season will be one of the bottom 2 or 3 teams. But the Sixers, of course, you mentioned it. They could win the East. I, for one, don't think they're at that level yet until they kind of prove that they can beat some of these bigger teams. But I see what you're saying. They have the talent. I think it's all about Markelle Fultz, to be honest with you. We know what we're going to get from Simmons and Embiid. Even a guy like Saric is a decent player. It's all about Fultz. He has to be that X factor for me to feel confident that they can get past the Raptors, Celtics. Milwaukee's looking incredible right now. So, for me right now, the Sixers are in fourth. They're the fourth best team in the East, but that can change. They're a very young team with a great future ahead. So, yeah, the Hawks, like you mentioned, they're just an inconsistent team. They're a young team. They're kind of devoid of talent, to be honest with you. So, yeah. How about we move on to one game between the Blazers and the Pacers. We see the Portland Trailblazers win 103-93 on the road at Indiana. That's an impressive win. Indiana's been a tough team. They continue to be a tough team this year. They're at 4-3 now with that loss. Portland improves to 4-2 with that win. But a big second half by Portland as they outscore Indiana by 14 points and win this game. So they were down by 4 at halftime. They win by 10. C.J. McCollum led scoring for Portland. Him and Zach Collins both had 17, but a very well-rounded effort by the Blazers as we see 7 players in double figures. That's Aminu, Lillard, McCollum, Swanigan, Collins, Nick Stauskas, and Evan Turner all contribute with over 10 points. Swanigan had 10 boards. Aminu had 10 boards. Just a really strong win by Portland as they are now 4-2. And like we talked about with Denver and New Orleans, the Western Conference is going to be insane this year. If you thought it was crazy last year, well, we just added LeBron James.
Or crazy for the last 5 years.
We just added LeBron James to one of those non-playoff teams. So this should be 10, 11, 12 teams deep in terms of who's in the running to at least make the playoffs as we approach the last month of the season down the road. But even as of now, you look at the standings and you're like, wow, the Rockets and the Thunder, they have some work to do. So what's the last game on the slate for last night? Who played, Jeff?
The last game in hand last night was the Kings and the Heat.
Oh.
The Kings won by 10 over the Miami Heat, winning their third straight game.
In Miami?
In Miami. There were 3 different people on the Kings that scored 20 points. Buddy Hield had 23, De'Aaron Fox had 20, and Willie Cauley-Stein had 26 and 13 rebounds himself. Willie Cauley-Stein, after losing to Marcus Cousins, Cauley-Stein has really taken that manner of the number 1 center on that team. And everyone just has been playing well with that team and winning 3 straight. I don't think that's a fluke, especially when you're in the West Coast. But on the other hand, Richardson for the Heat had 31 points. Whiteside had 16 points, 24 rebounds. It was still a good effort for them. Dwayne Wade, oddly coming off the bench. I know he's in his end of his season, last season and everything, but that's still weird to think about. 8 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists after 27 minutes of playing, too. So not his best game by far. Fact of the matter is, the Heat have been kind of struggling, and the Kings are hot right now.
Yeah, Josh Richardson, you mentioned it. He had a great game last night. Whiteside was a beast, too. I think he contributed with another 5 blocks in addition to those rebounds. But him and Cauley-Stein were going back and forth last night. So the Kings, yeah, they've been impressive so far, 4-3. They will probably finish in the bottom 3 in the West, but you got to say that's a strong start. They're just playing at a really crazy pace. Their up-tempo is hurting teams. We saw Spoelstra talk about that yesterday, so impressive. And for the Heat, they fall to 3-3. They should be okay. They're a playoff team in the East.
They're fine.
Yeah. So I think we should go to a break. When we come back, we have power rankings, top 5, bottom 5. We haven't done this in a while. Woo! So now that everybody's played about 2 weeks in the NBA so far, just about 2 weeks now, as we approach the third week of the NBA season, are all 2 very early power rankings coming up next.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA, from the UFC to extreme cage fighting. They got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
And welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. We just finished talking about all the games that happened yesterday. Now we are doing our power rankings. So let's go do bottom 5 first, and you will start, Mark.
The 5th worst team that I have is the Brooklyn Nets.
Okay. I don't have them in my 5.
Interesting. There's a common theme with my bottom
I was debating
5.
them, though.
I'll let you know right now that you'll notice after I name all my 5 worst teams that there is a common theme. So, number 5. Brooklyn Nets.
Okay, and why?
I mean, where do you begin? Let's start off with their record, 2-5. They lose to the Knicks last night. They beat the Cavs, and yeah, I mean, I don't know. They beat the Cavs and the Knicks. Those are 2 terrible teams as well. I don't know. They aren't a very good team. Russell's probably their best player. They're a team that doesn't have a whole lot of talent. They're a team that's still suffering from the effects of that ill-advised trade that they made with the Boston Celtics years ago. So that's my 5th worst team. Who is yours?
My 5th worst team is the Dallas Mavericks.
The Dallas Mavericks.
Yeah, Doncic, I say, has been playing great, no question about it. But the rest of the team is very slacking. Like, there's not enough help for this team to really become a contender.
Uh-huh.
That's the main point of this. Like, Doncic is awesome, no doubt about it, but the rest of the Mavericks team is just, they're just there. They're just random guys from the grocery store, it feels like.
You have DeAndre Jordan?
Well, he's in his, 40s, it feels like now, and he's way past his prime, and this team just doesn't really have a lot of talent around Doncic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I considered them, but they had an impressive game last night playing against the Spurs.
Yeah,
they pushed them to the brink.
Of course, but there's only so much you can do.
Yeah, for sure. So my 4th worst team is the Atlanta Hawks.
Okay.
Yeah, so the Hawks, they're 2-4. Not the worst record.
They're my number 4 also.
Not the worst record, but they beat the Mavericks. In their other win, they somehow beat the Spurs, which I don't even know how that happened. But yeah, it's a team that, again, they just don't have very much talent. They have Trae Young, yes, but other than that, it looks like they're playing for a top pick. It looks like they'll be. I wouldn't be surprised if they're actually lower on this list as we approach through the games, as we get closer to the end of the season. Yeah, there's not a lot to talk about here. So they're your 4th worst as well?
Yes, they are. And basically, for all you just said, they're going to be competing for a high draft pick. They might be good in the next couple of years, but right now they're just looking for high draft picks.
Yeah, they're playing for the future. They're not playing for the now. Okay, so who's your 3rd worst team?
My 3rd worst team is the Phoenix Suns.
Phoenix Suns.
After winning their first game, they've lost 5 straight. And DeAndre Ayton has been playing, if anything, he's been playing very poorly. Mm-hmm. Like that one double-double he had in the beginning of the season, he hasn't really gone to that level ever since. They've been going nothing but downhill. Mm-hmm. And there's no sign of good things to come right now. It's just their 5 straight losses that just shows some bad play. I don't really know how else to explain it.
Yeah. So my third worst team is the New York Knicks.
Okay.
Yeah, so
You have them that low, really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
They're 2-5. They haven't been impressive to me at all. They beat the Nets, and they beat the Wizards. So, yeah, they haven't done very much this season. So, the New York Knicks, I mean, yeah, they beat the Nets. What do you say? I mean, they've lost pretty much every other game that they've played in. They've lost to the Heat, they've lost to the Warriors, they've lost to the Bucks, they lost to the Celtics. Albeit they've played some tough games, but I mean, who's their best player? Like, who is
the Knicks?
Yeah, who's their best player?
Is it obvious?
Who is it?
Porzingis.
He's not there, so who
Oh,
is?
you mean right now?
Yeah.
I can't think of anybody.
Tim Hardaway Jr. I mean, that's not good.
Even that's like, eh.
Yeah, I mean, Cantor has been okay. Like, he's a good piece, but he's a role player. So, they're my third worst team. Who is your second worst team now?
My second worst team is the Chicago Bulls.
Okay. All right. And why are they that low?
Because watching them play against the Warriors showed how poorly they are at rebounding and how poorly they are at defense and how poorly they are at offense.
But, Jeff, they beat the Hawks.
What's your point?
You have the Hawks higher.
And? That doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, so do I. So, yeah. So the Bulls they're a pretty bad team. Would you expect them to finish in the bottom 3?
Yes.
I am interested in seeing how Wendell Carter Jr. can have like the season that he can have, because he actually was decent last night against the Warriors, albeit in a blowout loss, 18-7 with 4 assists. It's not bad. We'll see what they can do. Again, they're a team that's kind of floundering right now. So they're my second worst team as well. Who is your worst team in the NBA?
Should we? I think both are the same.
Go ahead.
The Cleveland Cavaliers.
Oh no, they're not my no, I'm kidding. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Where do you want to start?
0-6.
Fired the coach.
Yeah, and
are they more dysfunctional than the Cleveland Browns? Are they the most dysfunctional team in town?
It's going to be one heck of a competition, that's for sure.
It's really hard to compete with the Browns in that regard, but they're doing it.
Yeah,
they really are.
They're pretty bad.
And now that Kevin Love is going to be out for a considerable amount of time, that's just that's not looking good.
Yeah,
I don't know. When will they win?
0-82.
They play the Hawks today.
0-82.
Can they win against the Hawks?
Probably.
They play the Nuggets and then the Hornets after that. So the watch is on to see when they will finally win. Okay, so why don't we transition to the top 5? This will be more interesting, I think. So you can start. Who's your number 5 team?
The Toronto Raptors.
The Toronto.
They were higher until their loss to the Bucks.
Toronto. Okay, so tell me why they're number 5.
Well, they're 6-1,
Mm-hmm.
and Kawhi Leonard has just been on a tear, as well as Kyle Lowry, and their defense is just phenomenal. And they know how to get the rebounds. They know how to get second chances. They know how. They have so much tenacity. They win with all the effort they put on to the court. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, they're really good. Are you concerned though that 5 of their wins are at home?
No,
Like they've had a really decent schedule so far. 5 home games.
I think they would have won those regardless.
You think so?
Yeah.
Maybe, but their schedule should get tougher.
Well, this will prove where they belong in the top 5 or not when these games come up that are pretty tough, actually.
Yeah, they're about to go on a road trip that includes the Suns, the Lakers, the Jazz, and the Kings. So they have 4 road games in a row coming up, which it'll be interesting to see if they maintain their wins on the road or not.
We'll definitely see if they belong in the top 5 or not after this next couple of weeks.
Yeah, so my number 5 might be a little surprising to you, but it's the Utah Jazz.
Okay.
So they're at 4-2.
I'm going to tell you this. They're not on my top 5.
So they're at 4-2. Incredibly, they're 0-2 at home. They're 4-0 on the road. That's got to be one of the weirdest things that...
That's a pretty weird statistic.
That's a weird thing to see.
That's a weird statistic.
Yeah. Now, I think better basketball is ahead for them though. I think that they just smashed the Pelicans. Like that's a really good win. They've beaten the Rockets. They barely lost to the Warriors. They lost by 1 point.
Yeah, that was a good game too.
They're right there. The thing that I like most about Utah is that they're a very good defending team. They consistently give a good defensive effort, and they're led by that goalie of a center, Rudy Gobert. I mean, that guy is incredible. He blocks everything. He alters so many shots.
He's on roller skates.
I just really like what I see between him and Mitchell. Like that duo of Gobert and Mitchell is very devastating. So,
oh yeah, it's a great team, no question about it.
I actually think that they could climb higher on this list as the season goes on. But who is your fourth best team in the NBA right now?
I don't know if you'll agree with this one, but the San Antonio Spurs.
Okay.
DeMar DeRozan has been playing so well and has impressed me so much that I have to put him up there. Marcus Aldridge has been a rebounding machine, and just everything seems to be clicking with this team. Mm-hmm. I thought they would be on a downhill slide.
They beat the Lakers twice.
Yeah, and just this team just looks like a new identity without like Kawhi Leonard. They just look like a brand new team, a better team.
Yeah, we'll see. They've also had a schedule that most of their games have been at home, so I wonder if they'll be able to maintain that level of play. They do have a pretty favorable schedule coming up, though, so I could see them, reeling off some wins and actually bolstering their stake at one of the best teams in the West, at least temporary. It's hard to tell this team long term, but DeRozan has been very impressive. I agree with that, but I think I still think Kawhi was a big loss, but they're not showing it so far. So my number 4 team, I think our top 5 is all completely different, by the way. My number 4 team is the Denver Nuggets.
You will be very surprised by my number 3.
So I have Denver at number 4. What can you say? The team, again, very well-rounded. They really don't have just one stud. They don't have just one horse, but they are a well-rounded team. They can score. They can defend. We're talking about a team that is very, very consistent right now. They're scoring at a rate of about a 9-point difference over their opponent. That's a really good clip in the NBA. I think they can keep this up. And I also have to mention that they did beat the Warriors, so that's a nice win on their resume in the early start of the season. So,
absolutely.
Who's your number 3?
The Denver Nuggets.
Denver Nuggets.
And basically everything you just said was I going to say. They beat the Warriors. They look like a team that just plays well together, good chemistry, great defense, and they use it to go into their switch. They go from defense to offense like in a second. They go really quickly. They're really good, and they are one of the better rebounding teams in the NBA also, and that's a huge thing to help you win games. And the bottom line is each guy contributes. It's not like just a one-man show. This is a five-player team. Everyone on the court contributes one way or another, and that's how they win games.
They've had a favorable schedule, so I am interested to see if they can continue this because everyone knows they might have the best home court advantage in the NBA just because of the altitude. Like, it's really hard to play in Denver. Mm-hmm. And, especially when teams are playing a road trip and they got to stop in Denver, that is so tough for opposing teams. So we'll see if they can continue that. So my number 3 is the Toronto Raptors.
Okay.
I have them at 3. They've lost one game. It was without their best player. Kawhi Leonard, of course. Toronto Raptors, I don't know if a whole lot needs to be said, Jeff. I think I said it all. They lost one game. It was without their best player. They've been playing very, very good basketball. They do have some tough games coming up as they head out west, but what do you think about my pick for number 3?
That's a good pick.
All right. So who do you have for number 2?
Number 2 is the Milwaukee Bucks. Even though they're undefeated, we all know who's going to be number 1. But even though they're undefeated, I still think they play extremely well. And like even without the Greek Freak, and they beat another unbeaten team in the Raptors, like they're serious contender for the East. But the fact of the matter is, number 1 is just so far ahead of everyone else that there shouldn't be comparisons. My opinion.
I think Brook Lopez, that signing kind of flew under the radar, but he has been a really good addition for Milwaukee. But Bledsoe, Brogdon, Ilyasova, they got a nice little team there. It's not just the Greek Freak. Of course, he's the orchestrator of that entire symphony. He's a great player. I think MVP caliber. And he's only getting better, it seems like. But, yeah, you just said it. Like, Milwaukee, they're undefeated. Like, what can you say? They're playing everybody. They're beating everybody. So, impressive win against the Raptors last night by 15. Yes, they didn't have Leonard, but the Bucks also didn't have their guy, the Greek Freak. So, who's number 1 for you, Jeff?
The the Golden State Warriors.
The Golden State Warriors.
Do I need to explain this?
Explain yourself.
I don't need to. This is pretty obvious.
Is that team talented enough to win this year? Do you think they need to add a piece at the trade deadline?
No.
We haven't really even
Because once that trade deadline happens, they're going to have DeMarcus Cousins.
Yeah, we haven't even seen them at full strength yet, so they're treating these early games as preseason games, and why wouldn't you? So, yeah, the Warriors are number 1 for both of us, of course. Kind of boring, but what can you say? The facts are the facts. The truth is the truth.
Sometimes the most obvious decision is the right decision.
Cool. So let's take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about some news and notes in the NBA. And also, I'm going to run down top 5 players at 3 offensive categories. I talked about Jimmy Butler and his prowess for his defensive stats, his hustle stats, which is a great stat that I like to look at. I'll probably take a look at that, too, in detail. But we'll talk about offense as well and see if there's any surprises in these numbers. So we'll do that right after this.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
And welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. We talked about our power rankings. We talked about the games that happened yesterday. Now we are moving on to our final segment, which is the best players in certain statistical categories.
Yes. So, let's start off with points per game. I'll ask you, Jeff. Name a player who you think is in the top 5 in points per game so far.
Stephen Curry.
He is number 1.
Really?
32 and a half points per game. So you got that
How
one
many
right.
threes?
Give me another player who you think is in the top 5.
LeBron James.
He is not.
Really? Kawhi Leonard. No. DeMar DeRozan.
No, none.
Really?
You're wrong in all 3 of those.
I
I think one's pretty obvious that you haven't said.
Who did I miss? Oh, Klay Thompson?
No.
Kevin Durant?
Mm-mm. More obvious.
More obvious. I said Stephen Curry already.
Somebody who's consistently in the top 5 every year.
Is he in the West?
Mm-hmm.
I know who you're talking about, and I'm completely blanking.
Describe this person.
He's tall.
I mean, yeah, but not comparatively.
Okay, granted.
Maybe tall compared to Steph.
Oh my gosh, why am I blanking right now? Don't tell me. I know this.
All right. Well, whenever you're ready.
He's in the West, you say?
Yes.
Is he in the Pacific?
There's a few players. So,
Are they all in the West?
All right, I'm just going to name them because you're just
Giannis?
You're struggling.
Okay, fine.
You're not even saying any names. I was talking about James Harden.
Oh my God! How did I forget James Harden? What am I doing?
So he's number 4 at 28.5.
How? Well, only number 4. How did I forget James Harden?
Do you want to know who number 2 is? Very surprising. He's in the East, and he doesn't play for a really irrelevant team at all.
An irrelevant team in the East. That really narrows it down. The Hornets? Is he on the Hornets?
Yeah, so who would it be?
Oh, so it has to be Kemba Walker.
It is.
It's not that, I don't see that surprising because he does play at a high level. I mean, for the Hornets.
Yeah, but I mean, 31.7 is what he's averaging.
Wow, that's actually a lot. Well, okay, it is really early in the season.
Mm-hmm.
That's all. Let's take that into consideration. I don't think he's going to stay up there in 31 per game.
So there's 2 more people in the top 5 that you haven't guessed. You haven't named them. You named a bunch of people, and you haven't named them, including one player who had a 50-point game recently.
Klay Thompson.
You already said him. He's not in there.
Stephen Curry. I already said him too.
Another player who had a 50-point game recently that was very notable. His first one in his career. You talked about him last week. Blake Griffin.
Right. Oh, wow.
He's averaging.
Sorry that I forgot about Blake Griffin. Pardon me.
28.4. Number 3 in the league for points per game.
That's how much he was low averaging, because if he's only at 28 and he had a 50-point, he must have like 10, 15-point games.
So Griffin's at number 5. Number 3 is a player that plays out west. Damian Lillard. That's your number 3.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
He's at 30.8.
Okay.
So I'm surprised about Kemba in there. That number has to come down.
That and Blake Griffin.
Blake Griffin, though, I can see it because he is a guy who gets fouled a lot. He's going to be a guy that gets a lot of cheap points. But Kemba, I mean, we'll see. How about rebounds, Jeff? The top 5. Can you name any of them?
What is it?
Rebounds. Top 5.
Giannis.
He's number 4.
Aldridge.
He's not in there.
Really? Okay.
14.2.
DeAndre Jordan.
He's number 3 at 15.1.
Okay. Whiteside?
Number 1.
There he is.
At 16.2. You're missing number 2 and number 5.
Draymond Green?
No.
LeBron James?
No.
No.
These are all bigger guys.
Those are like centers. Anthony Davis?
No.
Really? That's actually kind of surprising.
He's been banged up a little bit.
I know, but that's still surprising. JaVale McGee?
Nope. How about somebody who I talked about in the last segment of a very, very good defensive player, a very tall defensive player?
Oh, the dude from Utah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm trying to remember his name. Don't tell me.
His nickname is a Stifle Tower.
I love that. That's an awesome name.
It's Rudy Gobert.
Rudy Gobert, I knew that.
13.5. But who is number 2 at 15.8?
15 rebounds a game?
He plays on a surprising Eastern Conference team. An upstart Eastern Conference team.
Is it the Hornets again?
It's Detroit. It's Andre Drummond.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
15.8. Okay, so let's get into this category. This is one I really like. This one jumps out at me. Assists. The top 5 in assists per game.
Rondo.
Not in the top 5.
Is it because
he missed too many games? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Curry?
No.
Harden?
Yes, he's number 2 at 9.
Westbrook?
No.
I'm just thinking of guys that get triple doubles a bunch. That's why I'm mentioning them. LeBron?
Yes. I was surprised you said Rondo before LeBron. LeBron is number 3 at 8.3. So you're missing number 1, number 4, number 5.
Number 1. So I'm missing 1, 4, and 5. Lowry?
Lowry is number 1 at 11.
Wow.
2 better than the next guy.
Wow.
Yeah, that number is really high. That's a lot of assists. 11 a game.
Well, because he gives it to Lowry, and that's or Leonard. Sorry.
All right, so the last 2.
Are they both guards? Point guards?
One is a guard, one is a forward. One is a guy that you talked about how well he's been playing.
Oh, DeMar DeRozan.
Yes, he's number 5. And number 4 is a forward that plays on a high-scoring team.
I'm assuming that's the Warriors. Thompson or Durant?
Neither.
Draymond?
Yes, Draymond. Mm-hmm. All right, so that's your top 5. Draymond's at 8.1. So, any surprises?
He has been lower in the points, so that makes sense.
Any surprises for you here in these categories? I mean, Kemba points per game, 31.7. That's a lot.
LeBron in assist is.
You think it should be higher?
A little
or
bit.
higher or lower?
I think I think Westbrook and Harden are gonna break that list though.
Westbrook will be up there in assists more than likely.
That's why I'm like LeBron. I think Westbrook gets more assists than LeBron does.
Yeah.
So that's why I was a little shocked about that.
Mm-hmm.
But everything sounds in order.
Cool. So, that's what I have. We were talking about the hustle stats category, and I really like
Butler.
that. Yeah.
He's number 1, you said.
So Butler has 4.8 deflections per 36 minutes in the NBA. That is an incredible rate. He is well above the next 3 players. Mahimi, Kelly Oubre, and Ricky Rubio all are at 4.2 per 36. Anthony Davis at 3.7. Amon Shumpert's actually at 3.7 as well with Anthony Davis. But it is interesting because I know some people talk about Ricky Rubio. I think he's an underrated defender. Like it shows here, he gets his hand on a lot of passes. Jimmy Butler does too. Mm-hmm. Do you have an idea of who recovers the most loose balls per game?
That's not Jimmy Butler?
No. He's number 2.
Loose balls. No, I don't really.
It's Anthony Davis. He averages 2.5.
That's actually kind of surprising.
Mm-hmm. Loose balls recovered per 36. Derek Favors is at 3.2. Anthony Davis is 2.5. So it's nice to see. I just like these numbers because it shows who's being active. We know that a lot of defense is about being active, being aggressive, and just hustling, and that's why I think that's called hustle stats. But
no, really.
I mean, yes, it does take some skill, but a lot of the times it's effort.
It's hustle.
Yeah, it really is. So I think that's all we got for today. We're going to wrap this thing up. We'll be back on Thursday to talk about the games that are upcoming. There's some matchups tonight and tomorrow that may affect our power rankings and our outlook. Still very early in the season, but I am excited to be back with you on Thursday.
There's a lot more to go.
And we'll do that on Thursday, so see you then.
Bye.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.